Okay guys, so here's another tutorial. Today we're working on, we're talking about red rock, um, and this is a scene that I saw in, well, I was in St. George, um, or around that area anyway, and yeah, I just love the color of the rock and and the lighting and everything, so I wanted to try and capture that. Um, this time I'm painting on an illustration board. And I have this piece. The portions are essentially 1 to 2. I'm not sure if it's like a 4 by 8 or something like that, or 3 by 3.5 by 7. So it's a smaller piece, smaller painting, but it's like a 1 to 2 ratio. Anyway, so I did a um, quick sketch, kind of composing, show me where the rocks, the mountains are, and the most important elements in the piece. That'll give me a guide for what needs to happen with the painting. Then I'm doing like this orange watercolor wash, remove the white of the board, and then that'll be like the foundation for me to do the painting. Um, I'll need that to dry, and then I'll move forward with it. Um, One of the things that I really liked about this piece is it felt alien. It was so red, which is so crazy, especially with the lighting, because it was an evening lighting. The sun was kind of closer to golden hour, and so those rocks seem even warmer. Um, so I like to I kind of like to with these paintings, I like to start from the furthest thing back and work my way forward. At least um, starting off to kind of get things blocked in. In this case, or in most cases, it's the sky. So I have my mountains roughly kind of drawn in there, and I'm painting the sky past where I'm planning on putting the rocks. That way, when I come in and do the mountains a little bit, that I'll have a nice clean edge. I'm not doing like a coloring book thing where I'm painting right up to the edge, and then I do the mountains next to that. Not that that's a bad thing. I just like to be able to um, have a nice clean edge and have that be right for, like the edge be dictated by my brush stroke versus the drawing or something that I've kind of put in there. Um, anyway, so we got the sky blocked in there, and you can see that that orange that blocking does affect the paint that I put up on top, right? It does reactivate a little bit and kind of shows through, and that doesn't necessarily bother me. If I really wanted to, I could make it so that I don't see that orange. But I feel that like that because of putting like a base down, a base color, not only does it take away like the white of the paper surface that you're painting on, but it also does kind of mix slightly with the other colors and things that you put on layers you build on the painting, and that kind of helps to harmonize the colors anyway. So that's the thing that I kind of like as well, that um, with putting an initial base. So that's something you could really experiment with. I haven't really pushed or experimented too much with that, but there are artists that like to paint on yellow. I've never really tried that. You can even you know put in a really bright other saturated color like pink or something to have that be like a harmonizing color that's kind of affects your piece. For whatever reason, I just like to do like this orange color. It seems like a more of a classical way of approaching um, painting. But I mean, I often will do like more of a neutral color, like grays and stuff, so that it kind of, as I'm doing the painting, it does kind of those grays kind of show through. Anyway, so got the sky on there, and it's still the sky is still drying, right? I can see, especially in that left corner, you can see there's a little bit of a shine to it. That means it's still wet, and so um, and when I put that mountain down, it's looking like it's even kind of blending in with that, so it's softening out. And that doesn't necessarily bother me, especially because like that mountain is in the distance and it's not a main focal point, right? I'm not necessarily wanting people to look there. I'm more interested in that that say middle ground hill with the light hitting it, and then that's where I want you to look. And then the foreground is just kind of like this is in shadow. Um, and I chose this was I know that I chose also that to paint an orange base specifically for this painting because of those rocks are so warm. So I want it to kind of show through. Um, and because of that, I'm just kind of using that block and the shapes that are there as the initial block in for this mountain. So now I'm painting the shadow shapes, and those shadow shapes will help to define that foreground, midground, and foreground element, the focal point, and everything of what it's going to look like, at least as a starting point. Those midtones, though, that's where we see a lot of the texture going on in objects and in themes, right? So those midtones, in the highlights or shadows, generally they're kind of more flat because the light is in the light side, like the light is hitting it, and in the shadows there's no light, right? But in those midtones, that transition from light to shadow, that's where a lot of texture and detail is happening, and that helps to kind of for us to see and recognize and know what's going on with whatever it is we're looking at. That transition that helps to communicate a lot of information to us because that's like there's more contrast kind of going on in that area, and it helps to communicate what's going on. So that being said, that's where you want to control the texture and to help with those transitions. With these shapes that I'm working with, I'm really trying to push and pull, like, and design them and make them feel interesting. I'm interesting it by like varying the shape, and I'm like squinting and looking at the 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 size of the shadow shapes around it versus the light shapes, and referencing the photo and seeing what's working there, what's not working in mine. But it's like it's a push and pull of trying to get this balance of and variety in these marks of how the light and shadow are kind of playing off of each other or with each other in that area. And so I'm trying to I like some of those small thin cracks, what it implies, these bigger shapes, but I'm trying to make every little aspect of it interesting. um, it's great if like the reference that you're looking at or using has already some interesting things going on, so you can just kind of try to capture or copy it. But I'm trying to also use that and make it even better than it is. So those shapes, um, especially in relation to my painting, right? How the marks, that things that I already have going on at the moment, they're trying to make that interesting, make them cool. And if you keep, as long as you add in that variety and are trying to make design all that's going on in there and make it look really really interesting, ideally at the end of the painting the whole thing would be interesting, and people from a distance it'll work well and it'll be interesting, but then as people get closer to it, it'll be even more rewarding and satisfying for them to come in and see what's kind of going on, that next level of stuff. So always trying to make all the marks and everything you put into the piece interesting. So I'm trying to darken and deepen those shadows up a little bit. Look for like the darkest darks and reemphasize that. Gouache, especially with like the paints and pigments that I'm using, um, they start to they feel dark as I put on right now. You can really see them, but as they start to dry, the blacks and those, not that it's like real pure black, but they're dark, and as they dry, they start to kind of lighten a little bit. So that's kind of uh, one thing that you kind of need to be aware of, right? So you put it in there, it feels darker than it is or as it is right now, but it will lighten up a little bit. Uh, there's only so far you can go with it. But again, like if that darkness is really important to really feel how dark that is, then the question might be like, well, I can't go really dark with it. So what? How can I do that? So making the thing next to it lighter help it to feel darker. So that could be another solution. Um, Always kind of thinking of things maybe a little differently. Switching up my brush again, getting one of these calligraphy brushes to add some variety of marks. And also, I think I really like using these brushes to get plants and vegetation.